Hello, Grandma here. Recently I was building a program I call Snowman Army. It's actually a game. And I realized that I think I could use a timer. So I stopped working on that and decided I would explore timers. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to build a little program that explores timers. And so we will create a program. I like giving it a name. And I like giving it a version number, so in case I want to go back to a prior version. Now I want a copy of my sandbox world because it's a nice flat world that has no weather and that sort of thing that one can find a nuisance when debugging a program. Okay, what do we need to create our timer? Well, you want a timer to be running all the time. And no matter what's going on in the game, you want the timer to continue running. So that sounds like a forever loop. Okay, forever. That's good. We'll use this later. So we want something to go on forever. So this is the guts of our timer. Now, what are we going to use to keep track of time? Well, what I have found is that we could use a pause statement. Now this will pause for 100 milliseconds and then do something underneath there, like maybe print out the value of a timer or print out high or whatever you want to do. But I want to keep track of seconds. Milliseconds is just too short of time. So we'll keep track of seconds. 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. So we're going to, I guess we'll just print out high for every time a second. So let's go over here to the world and see what's going on. Look at that. It's telling us high, 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 high every second. And of course it's a little hard to tell that it's printing a new one, but it is printing a new one every second. I guess we really ought to have some variable in order to show what the time is. So let's create that. We'll go over here and stop this thing. Okay, thank you, I'm stopped. So let's make a variable called second counter. I like giving my variables meaningful names, even though it does take a little bit of typing. We want the seconds counter to start out at 0. Well, that sounds like a onStart command. You might wonder why onStart and pause are in the loop blocks group. I don't have a clue. So, I guess they might as well be there than anywhere else, but they're really not loops. Okay, in onStart, I want my variable seconds counter to be 0. Good. And in here, I want my second counter to be, I want to change it by 1 every time it goes through this loop. Now it's counting seconds. Cool. So now I want to actually say what the second counter is each time through the loop, which would be once every second. So to do that, I'm going to go down to text and pick this. And then I'll put my variable in there. Now it should say this so let's start this. Now remember, when I hit this button, it will start, which will run this code setting seconds timer to 0, and then every second it will pause a second, change the second counter by 1, and then print it out. So let's go. Note, there it comes, see? Second counter 1, second counter 2, second counter 3, second counter 4, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, Well, it would be nice to start and stop this timer without having to go over and stop the program, which is what I'm going to do now. So let's make us some chat commands. Go. And let's make another one called stop. Okay, and then how in the world do we signal the forever loop that we want to stop and start? Well, how about creating a variable called brun? If brun is true, then this forever loop should run. If it's false, it shouldn't. So actually, that's not quite true. Let me just put in the code here. So there. So now we want the variable brun to be here. And we always want to count off the seconds. So we're going to leave the pause outside the loop. And then it's going to test brun. If brun's true, it's going to print out the seconds. So it's going to keep running so that then if you start it again, it would pick up where it had left off. I think that's how I want it to work. I could put the pause inside the loop and it would have a little bit different effect. Let's just try that and see. Well, what do we want to happen now in Go? Well, we want the variable, we want to set brun to true. Where is true? Well, it's in the logic area, which makes sense. I want to set it to true. Now, in the stop, we want to set it to false. Now, when the code starts, we want to set it to false because we don't want it to be running when we start. Okay, I want to get all these on the screen, so let's just do this. Okay, so now let's start the thing again. And notice over here, nothing is happening. It's not continuing to increment. Now, if we say go, it starts at 1 because it had restarted. It had set the counter back to 0 when we started the program this time. Now let's say stop. And see, whoops, the counter stopped. Let's say go again. And it starts at 14. Because it had not been incrementing the counter while it had been stopped. Okay. Now what I'm wondering is, what difference would it make if we put this pause statement inside the loop? Does it make a difference? Okay, let's start it again and let's see what happens. I'm going to say go. Whoops, sorry. Okay, start. Go. And it's starting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's stop. And let's say go again. Don't see any difference. Okay. Well, in that case, let's just leave the pause inside the loop, because that would then mean that it's paused fewer times, less often, and that would make the overall code more efficient. Okay, so now what else do we want this program to do? Well, it's okay to say this, but I would really rather have it print out on the screen somewhere. So I want to use a print statement so that I wouldn't have to be watching it like this. So, because it's ugly. Okay, so we're going to go up here to blocks, sorry. And there's this wonderful print command. And so we're going to put that, we'll just put it after the say, and we'll use them both initially just to be so that we're confident that print is working like it should be. And what we want is to do this exact same thing. So we're going to put that there. Let's use gold. I like using gold. In the sky. And notice we're using coordinates relative to the player. So let's print it 20 blocks east of me to the east, and 5 blocks higher than I am, and I'm going to start it at -5 to the, that'd be to my left if I'm facing east, and it's actually north. And that way then, now which way do we want this to run? Well, this should say which direction it's printing towards, and we want it to print towards the south. Remember, I'm facing east, therefore south is on my south is on my right, so I want it to print towards the right. Okay, let's start this. I'm going to stop it, and now I'm going to start it again. See, there's nothing going on. Now I don't know which way east is. That can make you crazy. So let's do this little cool thing. I like knowing which way east is. So let's go back to this code, and I'm going to place a block in on start right in front of me. I'm going to place a sunflower. Why in the world would I do that? Well, I do that because a sunflower always faces east. And if I'm facing the same way as a sunflower, I know I'm looking to where the seconds counter is going to be printed. So I want it to be 1 block, or maybe 2 blocks in front of me. I want it to be at to be planted at my same level, and I want it to be in line with me. So now let's start and stop, and let's go over here. Well, I didn't want that there. We'll stop this thing. Let me move a bit. Be sure I'm on the ground. Now I'm going to start. There's my sunflower. You know, I think it was there before, I just wasn't looking the right direction. So now I am pointed, I am looking towards the east because I'm looking at the back of the sunflower. So now let's try, let's go. Look, there's our seconds counter. Well, that's kind of cute. That is not what I wanted. I just wanted the number to appear. So let's go back to the code, and we're going to take this out because it's going to take way too long to print that. Now let's go back over here and move. As long as we move east, then we know the stuff is behind us, so to speak. Now back here, we're going to stop and start. And sure enough, there is my sunflower. And if I say go, whoops, then the value of the counter should appear in the sky. There it is. And see, it's basically right in front of me. Whoops. Actually, we put it 5 blocks to the north of me, to my left. So if I'm right in front of the sunflower, kind of hard to get right in front of anything. Okay. So that counter is just running away. Now let's see what's happening here. It's doing the say, and the say is the same value as the print. But notice that the say, like now, when it rolls over, it takes a while for the print to take place, because the print is really very slow. Okay, let's stop it again. Now, I would like, now, if I wanted to start again over here, notice that the timer picks up where it left off. Okay, let's reorganize this code a bit because it's beginning to look kind of messy to me. So, we're going to organize these over here. And next, what I want to do is I want to be able to count some different amount other than 1 second. So what if I wanted to count every 10 seconds or every 60 seconds? So I'm going to introduce another variable called delta. And a delta is the difference from one thing to another. So delta will be the value of our increment. So here we change second counter by 1. Well, we might want to change it by delta. So we're going to change that by delta. Great. So now, but we don't want 1,000 here. We want 1,000 times delta. So we're going to go down here to the math, get our time signal, and we're going to put 1,000 times delta. Now, it will pause for delta seconds, and then it will update the second counter by delta, and then it will print out the second counter. Okay, that'd be cool. Now, the other thing that we need to do, though, is we need to be able to change delta. So let's put a chat command called delta, and we're going to give delta an argument. So the delta argument, so what values, okay, let's see what delta is going to do is we're going to set delta to num1. Okay, variables. Set delta to num1. Now, not all values of num1 make sense. For example, if num1, so num1 needs to be a positive non-zero number. So let's test for that. We'll use this one. If num1 is greater than 0, if num1 is greater than 0, then we're going to set delta to num1. But if it's not greater than 0, what if it is 0 or it is negative? So then we're going to set variable, we're going to set delta to 0. Okay, now we have a delta. Now, how would this work if we just run this exactly like it is? Let's move to a clean place. Whoops. Let's go over here and stop and start the code. Now we should have a sunflower pointing east. There it is. Okay, so now let's go. There it goes. Now what if we change delta to 5? Oh, look at that. That's interesting. It's 0 every time. We must have a bug. I absolutely love having a bug. You say, what? You crazy? Well, when I have a bug, that means I can learn something. So let's learn something. First of all, let's just go over here and be sure that both the say and the print are 0. Yes. So why would it stay 0? Well, I think delta started off, oh, we didn't have an initial value for delta, so it was 0. So delta is 0. Okay. So that, therefore, since we do this multiplication, the second counter always comes out 0. So we need to set delta to 1 is the initial value. Now, I bet it works. Yay! We found a bug. Oh boy, that was great. We learned that we had to initialize our second counter to, initialize delta to 1. And we also learned that if you don't initialize a variable, it's a numeric variable. It starts as 0. So unless you want it 0, you better explicitly set it to something else in the onStart. Okay, now let's try running delta. I'm going to change it to 5 and see what happens. Yep. See, it's displaying only after 5 seconds. So let's watch another one or two. Okay, it is doing what we want, but I really wanted it to count off 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, etc. I didn't want it to just start wherever it was. So somehow I need to reset the timer before I change delta. Okay, let's just see, how would we do that? Well, in delta, we could actually test for that. We want to be sure the second counter is 0. So we go to old logic here, and we'll use this one. And if second counter is equal to 0, second counter is equal to 0, we will reset delta to whatever num1 specified. But if it's not 0, actually, I think we're going to give kind of an error message. So we're going to say, I'm not going to say hi, we're going to say something like stop and reset timer before changing delta. Okay, and we want to give some information that delta got set, otherwise they won't know. So we're going to say, we're going to reset them. We're going to tell it what we did. You need to always give the user some reasonable feedback. So now, if we reset the timer, we're going to tell the user we did it. And we're going to tell the user that they need to stop and they need to reset the timer. So if they stop it, it still keeps the old value, which might have been 26. And then it was stopped, but we need to reset it back to 0. So to do that, we need a reset command. Okay, so we have a go, stop. You know, if you think about your stopwatch, it has a reset command. So let's just make ourselves a reset. So we will have a okay, what do I need to do in the reset? Well, first of all, I want to be sure the timer is not running before I actually do the reset. So I will use this. And I will say, how do we tell if the timer is running? Well, brun would have to be false if it's not running. So we're going to test for that. If brun is false, see, it's giving an error because brun is a logic, a Boolean variable, and you can't test it against 0. So you have to use one of these. Oops, we don't want to say true, we want to say false. Now the error message should go away. Good. So if brun is false, we will reset the timer. So to reset the timer, we want to reset delta to 1. And we want the second counter to be 0. Cool. Now we also want to erase whatever's in the sky because we don't want the old value to be there. So we need a print block. Whoops, I did this wrong. There. That's part of the initialization. The resets, we don't want it in the else. Okay, so we want to do a print block. What is that print block going to say? Well, how about the second counter? It's going to say the second counter, which is now 0. And after it, we need some blanks. Why? Because what if it were 36 like it's shown here? If you put 0, it would say 06. So you need to erase it. So if I put a couple of blanks, that would mean it would erase up to a 3-digit counter. Might as well go for 4 in case your counter ran a long time. Okay, so we're going to use gold again. And we're going to print it at the same place, which is 20 blocks in front of me, 5 blocks to the left, and I'm sorry, this is 5 blocks to the left, and it's 5 blocks above me. Okay, and then if brun were true, then that would be this space, and we're going to tell the user that we can't reset it right then. So we're going to go to here, and we're going to say stop timer before reset. Now, if you notice, like your clock on your timer on your phone, that's what it requires. You can't reset it before you've stopped the timer. As soon as you stop it, you'll see the reset button. And then I often want to say, to give my user some indication that the program is running or done, so no matter what happens, they know that. Actually, I think I want this to be only if the reset took place, which is, of course, they actually know that because it printed something in the sky. So I think I won't waste the block. There you go. Okay, so the user got some feedback no matter which happened. So now we have a reset. So now let's try this again. We will go over here and we're going to move to a different place. I'm getting tired of doing this manually. So about the next thing we're going to do is, you know what, build a little move me thingy. Okay, run. There's my sunflower. Whoops, there he is. Okay, you know what? I think, I was wanting it to say 0 in the sky when it first started because it should be in the same state as the reset command puts it in. So I have this idea that if we go over here and we look at the on start, and we compare it to reset, they're doing very similar things. They both set the second counter to 0. They both set delta to 1. And in reset's case, brun was already false, so of course it wouldn't hurt to set it to false. Okay, no, retract that. Okay, this should test brun for false. So if we're going to do this sort of the same thing, we could combine these. And the way I would combine them is to make the guts of this right here a function. So, a function, how fun. And the reason we're doing that is to combine code, to have the same code be in just one place. And that's a good thing because if you change one, you want to be sure that logic changes everywhere. So now the part of this code that's common is this block right here. Now, if brun is false, which is what we want, that means it's not running, then we can actually run this function. So we just say, there, we want to run reset function. Run. So that runs the reset function. Now, over here in onStart, so if we take this out and this out, then we can just run reset. After we've set brun to false, otherwise reset will not do what we want. And of course, in addition, we want to place this wonderful sunflower. Oh, notice it's doing its thing over there, so I think I want to stop it for a while. So I think we want to place this up here. Okay, now let's go over here and get a new place. I think the next thing we're going to do, we're going to make a move me. Now, go back here and start it. now it puts, well, that's not right. It gives us a 0, but it's like pointed the wrong direction. Gee, I never make a mistake. Wonder how that happened. Ah, joke, joke, joke. Sure enough, it said along the west line. We don't want it along the west. We want it towards the south. We want it towards the south. Okay? It corrected it. That's cute. So we'll have to move again. Start up again, and there's my sunflower, and there's my 0 pointing the direction from, so I can read it from left to right. Okay, so what else do we need to do here? We certainly need a little more testing, but I'm here to tell you I'm not going to do testing until we have a move me, because I get tired of that manual moving all the time. So let's make a nice move me. Okay, so chat command. I like to put, this is called camel casing, where if you have 2 words to make something, I'm gonna stop this. Like move is one word, then me is another. Then I capitalize me to help me read it. But in Minecraft, case doesn't matter in the chat window, so I can just write move me all in lowercase when I'm actually wanting to run the command. Now, what do I want move me to do? Well, I want it to move me, the player, I think 100 blocks to the east would be good, because that would get me well past where this number is located. So to do that, I could just do that in one horrendously long block, but I like to do it in little steps. For one thing, I may need to debug the program. So I'm going to make me 2 variables, x and z. And we're going to calculate x. I'm going to set x to position. We want it to be the player world position. And we want it to be the x coordinate, which is what that is. And we want something really similar. Okay, what did I just do? Okay. Sometimes my blocks move around. Okay. Z to player world position Z. Now I want a teleport to, and I want this to be a world position because X and Z are world positions. So I go to position and tell it I want a world position. And I want this coordinate to be X that I just calculated. And I want this coordinate to be Z. And I want this Y, which is the up and down, I want that to be a 4 because 4 is exactly where the player's, it's just above the grass, which is where the player's feet should be. So even if your player were flying around, it would put the position, it would move the player to be feet on the ground. Now I could have done this in one horrendously long block. In fact, I'm willing to show that to you. So we'll just get another teleport. And we would do this. Oh, I have to have it be a world position. So I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to, whoops. This will go there instead of the variable. And and therefore I have it just in one big old command. And that's good if you don't care anything about reading your code. I mean, basically, you really don't want to scroll that much from left to right when you're reading code, so I like to break mine up. And further, if I've broken them up like this, I can actually print out or say X and say Z just to be sure, you know, they're correct. When I'm in debug mode, if something's wrong, it may take me a while to figure out exactly what's wrong, and that's why you want it to be all the same. Now, there's one other thing. When you move me, you're going to want to reset every time. And in fact, not only do you want to reset, you want a sunflower. So I think, let's see how to do this. Okay, we'll just put the sunflower right here. Okay, so I'm going to place it. And remember, that's 2 in front of the player, even with the player here and even with the player here. Okay, that's the sunflower. Okay, now let's just explore our code again. We're going to first move me. Oops, we have to run before we can do that. Okay, so see, move me is running. Oh, it's not moving me. What's wrong? It's not moving me. Because we can tell that because, see, it's teleporting, but like it's not going anywhere. You can see that down here in the numbers, the coordinates to where it teleported me to. Why isn't it going anywhere? Well, because we didn't change the value of X. So now what we want to do is change, we're going to change X, which is the east-west coordinate. I'm going to change X by, I think 100 is enough. Okay, now we're going to move me. And sure enough, there's my sunflower with no number in the sky. And if I look back, there's a whole bunch kind of going way back because I moved each time to the east. Okay, so now let's see if all this works. Now, I'd like to do some slow-mo, so I need to position my code a little bit better here. What do we want to watch in slow-mo as we debug? I think watching on start would be good. I know we want to watch this. We don't need to watch these. Yeah, I want to watch on start. It's kind of crowded here. Okay. Now, I want to start this in slow-mo. Now watch, when I start it, it will execute the code in onStart. See there? It did that, and it did my forever loop. Now slow-mo, everything's going to change really slow. Now, nothing's happening because now B run is false every time, so it's going to sit there until I do something different over here. And so we're going to say go. Now we're watching what happens when B run is true. It goes through the code and it changes all the nice numbers. Now I want to stop. Notice now B run has stopped. As soon as it finishes printing what it was printing, which may take a little while, it stops. Now I want to reset. And sure enough, it's reset back to 0. Now I could change delta. I'm going to count every 5 seconds. Oh, I have to go. That makes sense. See, it's paused. It's waiting 5 seconds at the pause. Then it does its thing. It prints 5. Then it goes back and it waits 5 more seconds. And then it does the print and the say. Now, this is a good time to tell you that the reason this timer is not perfectly accurate, and I've run quite a few tests with my phone, just manually, call it the eyeball test, is because it pauses for 5 seconds, but then it has to execute this code, including the print statement. The print statement takes quite a long time to print. In fact, it takes several seconds. So every time through the loop, the timer is off. Every time it prints, it gets off again by a few seconds. Now, what I've learned is that if you're running through this loop, say, when delta is 1, the timer gets way off because the print statement is taking so long. Now, if you set delta to 30 so that it's only printing every 30 seconds, the timer is amazingly accurate. In fact, if I try my very best to start my phone and the timer at the same time, they come out pretty much as near as my eyeball can tell. They're pretty much the same. So now this brings up the subject for a game. How would you use this in a game? Well, you have to remember that it's not going to be completely accurate depending on what the timer has to do in its guts. So, okay, that was a big, long thing. Okay, have we tested all of its features? Well, we could try stop again. And you also have to test when you do something more or less wrong. So let's try changing delta to 10. And the message says, stop and reset the timer before. So it didn't change it. So if we said go again, it would still be 5. You might wonder why I leave those blocks, I'm sorry, leave those slimes around. It's just, basically, they keep me company. So, okay, so now if I want to actually reset the timer, I have to stop, reset, then I can do a delta. Now we're going to be at 0, and then it's going to increment every 10 seconds. You know what? I keep forgetting I have to say go. There. Now it's going to do every 10 seconds. There it is. Now it won't do it until at 20 seconds. It will increment it again. Okay, that is the basic handy timer. In my next post, I'm going to show you how to use blocks on the screen as buttons so that you can stop, go, and reset without having to go into the type commands. Another thing I'm going to show you is how to fix this problem. Watch this. I think I could illustrate this better if I change delta back to 1. So I'm going to do a stop, a reset, and then I'm going to do a go. That which delta should be 1. Is this another bug? It is. At reset, delta did not get set back to 1. So let's just go over here, try stopping this, and let's go look at the reset code. Reset. Do reset. It says set delta to 1. Well, that's interesting. Well, that sure seemed like a bug to me. But I'm not seeing, so when I reset and it's stopped, then it calls the reset function. Let's just see if it did. So I'm looking here. Oh, look, it says stop before reset. And I did stop, but maybe I misspelled it or something of that sort. So I'm going to look at the stop command and see what stop is doing. So I'm going to assume I actually misspell stop. Yeah, I spelled it S-O-P. See, that doesn't work. So there is no bug, and we should verify that. You have to do that all the time. So let's do a move me. Okay, we're moved and we're started, so let's do go. Okay, we're going. We're going to stop. Yeah, I actually know see what's wrong with this code. We didn't do something that's really very important. So here's what we need to do. We always need to give the user feedback. So here I would say stopped. So anytime the stop command is executed, and when I typed in stop, it wouldn't have run, so you wouldn't see stopped. And I need to do a similar thing here to tell when we go. Okay, so now let's go again. it's running, it's incrementing by 1. Now let's do a stop. Notice it said stopped. Yeah, I know I didn't type stop. And then I'm going to do a reset. Look at that, reset's not giving me feedback. So, oh, yes it is. The 0 is printed in the sky. But since I'm looking for feedback in the say, I think maybe we should fix that later. So now it's reset, so I can change delta to 10. Well, let's change it to 5. Okay, it set delta to 5. And then remember, I have to type go, running. Now it will, every 5 seconds it should update. Now I want to stop. Okay, it stopped. Now I want to reset with reset. Okay, I'm resetting. So it's going to put it back to 0. So now I know reset ran. Now I want to do delta. Reset, change delta back to 1. So let's go again. Good. Okay, that seems to be working. Okay, just one more little thing over here to clean up. I really didn't like the fact that the reset command did not give us feedback using the say. So we're going to put in here there. Now all of our say commands have feedback to the user no matter what happens. And then the user will know what happened rather than scratching their head to see if something is wrong. Okay, that is the timer. Now I'm going to make 2 improvements to timer. One will be in the next post, which will show you how to use blocks on the screen for the various chat commands so that you don't have to look at that ugly screen where the chat commands are. And the next, oh yeah, let me explain why we want the next one. Okay, we're going to start this all again, but we're going to go turn slow-mo off, and we're going to start running again. Okay, then we're going to say go. Okay, it's going, going, going. I wanted to move up so I could see it a little better. Oh, look! It moved. Now if I move over a little bit, just because I wanted to, look at that. The print's going different places depending on where I move. I hate that. Gee, how would I get back to where it's supposed to be? Not a clue. Well, you can get back and line yourself up with it. Okay, I don't like that. How would you fix that? Well, my post after the next is going to explain how to fix that problem. Basically, if you've noticed in your programs that do use player world position, if you move the player, then the code does something different. It puts things in a different place. Now, lots of my programs, I want to move the player because I want a different vantage point to watch what's happening. And so I routinely use a different method for pinning down a position rather than using player world position. But if you're just starting learning to code, it's easy to use player world position, and that is when to use it. Okay, see you soon. Bye. Grandma out.